Hey guys, loud guys. Today we are going to watch Texas Rangers raid Cartel Island on border with Mexico. So just by reading this title, like she was asking me that okay, like why do Texas have their own rangers? Because normally in India we have our states, and we states do not have these rangers or army kind of thing. We have police officers. But in Texas there is police also, but then there are rangers also.
So every state has their own army.
So what I don't know, every state has their own army, but yes, I think so they are given power so that they can defend themselves on their own also. Like I know, like one thing that all these states have given a lot of powers. And
like I don't understand the purpose of the army. Like, is there possibility of fighting, like states are fighting among each other?
That never happened. I think so. Like as far as I know, I do let us know in the comment section if it has ever happened. But it is for the safety of their own people by their own hands. Like they don't wait for the central government to save them.
Yeah,
it is like
order and then this and that.
So this is the similar thing. Like they on border with Mexico, so like they might have seen a cartel. So like if cartel doing something and they feel like they need to attack on it.
Maybe they have caught them.
I would love to see what happened in that raid. So let's watch this
video.
This is Fronton Island, located right on the Texas border with Mexico. Local law enforcement called it the single most dangerous point in the region. For years, cartel gunmen have used it to traffic illicit substances, weapons, and people. Just as the sun was rising on October 9th, 2023, dozens of Texas Rangers locked and loaded their M4s, donned their body armor, then jumped into a convoy of ATVs. Then they pushed south into the island. 3 bomb squad teams were standing by, prepared to remove any explosives the Rangers might find. This is because the poor visibility in the dense foliage on the island has led to it becoming a stash site for drugs, duffel bags filled with assault rifles, and even improvised explosive devices. This mission to retake the island from the cartel is probably one of the strangest in recent memory, and it sounds like it's straight out of a badass Chuck Norris fever dream. But Texas officers weren't working alone. They worked in cooperation with Mexican federales who established a security zone on the far side of the border. Teamwork makes the dream work. The primary goal was to seize a series of small structures on the island. The building had actually been marked with Gulf cartel markings using spray paint. This recent surveillance footage from the island showed armed cartel patrols crossing into the United States, as well as warehouses on the far side of the river marked with territory symbols, because corporate branding is more important than hiding your illegal operations, apparently. They were already covered in bullet holes from previous firefights between rival gangs. The invading officers were already briefed on the location of these buildings because from a strategic point of view, they were located at the island's highest elevation point. This made them perfect spots for sniper nests that had been used in the past. Even though the officers were prepared for a direct fight, they had been operating under incredibly strict rules of engagement. Rules of engagement, or ROE, are basically a set of guidelines that define what you can legally shoot at and not shoot at. The officers were previously briefed that accidentally firing at a friendly Mexican soldier could spark an international geopolitical incident. According to Texas officials, any return fire from Americans needed to be in strict self-defense, otherwise it would carry a possibility of being extradited and potentially prosecuted by the Mexican government. To get the best possible picture out of what they were walking into, Texas authorities sent in drones as reconnaissance, which scouted for any armed cartel personnel on the island. These assets also searched for potential IEDs and traps. The reason this has become a matter of international tomfoolery is because the island only formed in 1926 after a channel of the Rio Grande River cut it off from the mainland. Since then, it's existed in a weird legal middle ground of international boundaries. It's a literal middle ground if you think about it. It's been seen as a kind of no man's land, a purgatory for many years.
Fight for
because both the United States and Mexico forgot who owned the island. It wasn't until 1976 that the United States officially claimed it as part of American territory. Since then, it's been under private ownership, occasionally being used by Mexican cattle farmers, but the legal ambiguity of the island meant law enforcement typically avoided it on both sides. This was done to prevent any international issue because of where it sat on the border. Across the Rio Grande River is the Mexican state of Tamaulipas, which has the honor of holding the highest danger classification given by the United States on the state. This is due to the high levels of crime and kidnapping. The island and the area surrounding it has regularly seen gunfights as the two cartels tried to gain control of the crossing point. Recently, everyone from Border Patrol agents to local citizens have been targets of deadly
One dead,
shootings
two
here.
injured.
Due to the unclear ownership of the island, cartel members became emboldened, realizing that they essentially had immunity on the island. They could run there and shout, "Home base, you can't touch me." This has led to several firefights because in November 2016, cartel members on the island fired on Texas Department of Public Safety agents
no.
who were surveilling these cartels. They even wounded one of the officers in the firefight. A few years later, in 2019, Border Patrol agents took small arms fire from an automatic weapon that fired at least 50 shots at the patrol boat on the Rio Grande. All of this happened right near the site where the infamous incident happened, where American tourists were shot in the crossfire of a cartel firefight in 2023.
Why
This
the
isn't even
tourist?
to touch on the fact that bodies are frequently found here, and police are often called to respond to reports
Bodies
of
are
shots
frequently
fired.
found.
Texas officials claim all these explosions and gunfires were likely done as an intimidation tactic to deter American incursions onto the island. Mike Salinas is a 30-year-old veteran of the U.S. Border Patrol, and he explained that despite the island being legally part of Texas, the general theme was, let's not get on there and find out, because the optics of the whole thing might open up a big old Pandora's box of holy moly. This is because local governments on both the United States and Mexican side largely stay away from this island, possibly due to its dubious territorial status. But from the cartel's perspective, the geography and location
But
made
I
it
have to
an
respect
obvious
this. Like they are
perfect
so
choice.
like understanding. Like if there is an island, they are still not fighting over it. They are like, let's not irritate him, and he like let's
They
not
both
irritate
have
him.
that mutual understanding. for
I
that.
know for sure if this would have happened in Asia, every country would be
There
like,
will be
this
a
is
war,
mine, my land,
war,
my land,
war,
my land.
Huge war.
Actually.
Obvious, perfect choice for smuggling and gun running. The island sits squarely between the territories of two major cartel groups operating in northern Mexico. You got the Gulf Cartel and the Cartel del Norte, or CDN.
CDG
Both
versus
of these
CDN.
have a long rap sheet of crimes that spill over into the United States, using extreme violence to gain and protect their criminal territory. Part of the reason this is such a hot spot is because of the geography of this area. There's 160 acres of densely wooded island that provide cover and concealment for the cartels. It's
Actually.
also a pretty remote location, with the closest town having a population of only around 180 people. But this has remained
180.
an issue for decades. All of these factors combined left Fronton Island an even more exposed target for cartels to operate. Geographically, it sits at a lower point on the Rio Grande, with shallow crossings that make it easier to cross.
Easily
Other
cross.
parts of the Rio Grande
By
are much
walk.
more dangerous to cross at. We've seen recent reports of people drowning attempting to get through. Leading up to the island from the south are paved roads and pathways that feed directly to the crossing areas, helping facilitate cartel movement. Fronton Island reaches a high point of 177 feet in elevation. What that means is, from a tactical point of view, is that it blocks any view or noise from Mexican crossing points and serves as an excellent lookout point into the United States, allowing you to monitor any border patrol activity.
Oh,
A typical
much
strategy
easier.
observed was that the cartel lookouts would use the island to scout for any American patrols in the area. Once the coast was clear, drugs, guns, and people would then be pushed across the river. To further complicate the legal quandary here, often the shootings by the cartel members originated from the Mexican side of the border into the United States. This made
from
them
Mexican
impossible to
side.
investigate or prosecute by American law enforcement.
Oh, very
US
smart.
police successfully seized Fronton Island by force without incident. Officers even planted a Texas flag on the island. But the occupation by the police was only the first stage of a much larger plan. The fight may have only just begun, because drone footage captured at least 10 cartel members patrolling through the same stretch of border only a month after the raid. Then, ground-level cameras captured even more armed foot soldiers here. The end goal of the island was to clear it completely, and they started by clearing it of vegetation and cut off all potential
no.
access from Mexico. The Texas Department of Public Safety, who headed the operation, made the all clear, which green-lighted National Guard horizontal construction troops from the
Oh, the
176th
wires.
Now they're
Engineer
barbed
Brigade
wires.
to bring in their heavy equipment. They laid down over 1.5 miles of razor wire to stop cartel freedom of movement here. They immediately started stripping Fronton Island of the foliage, ripping up trees, and removing brush. And there are now regular patrols by National Guard units under Operation Lone Star.
So they are
Despite
getting
the
very
regular breaches
strict
across the
with
river,
that, yeah.
U.S. Border Patrol has been unable to effectively police the area, especially in recent years. This is partly because the migration crisis that started around 2021 that's pulled a majority of Border Patrol agents to more densely populated areas to deal with massive migration crowds. So in 2023, 2.5 million encounters of migrants, both legal and illegal, were
2.5
recorded.
million.
So this number doesn't include those
A
that
lot of people
successfully
are
entered
coming
into
to
the United
USA.
States without being apprehended or noticed by Border Patrol. This has created a security and humanitarian crisis at the border. Migrants attempting to enter the United States were often used as mules for carrying contraband and escorted across the border under armed guard by members of the cartel. These people were charged as much as $8,000 to safely cross. This was compounded by the
$8,000.
coronavirus outbreak in 2020 and violent political outbreaks across South America and the Caribbean. People were seeking to escape poverty and trying to find new opportunities in the United States. But adding to this was President Biden's expansion of the temporary protected status eligibility for those crossing the border, as well as a loosening of Title 42 expulsions. In short, all this meant was that the risk of entering the United States illegally had a lower threat of immediate deportation. The early morning
So why
raid
is he
was
giving
actually part of a
advantage to
much
them?
larger strategy across the border aimed at curtailing cartel activity. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has recently ordered the National Guard and police force to take steps that conflict with orders of the national level given by President Biden. We recently saw Texas National Guard members ordered to take over Shelby Park in a similar incident where there was a belief that the border was not being protected at the national level. American efforts of battling the influx of cartel activity over the border has recently been expanded. By 2021, illegal border crossings into Texas had risen 278% versus the
that is
previous
too
year.
much.
And so the state launched Operation Lone Star in
Lone
response.
Star.
This was a comprehensive effort which included multiple state agencies and thousands of Army National Guard soldiers deployed along the border. To date, this has led to nearly 500,000 apprehensions at the border. However, cartel violence along the border has only increased, prompting more efforts to stop it. The state of Texas has received the brunt of cartel violence, and for obvious reasons. Its over 1,200-mile border with Mexico
the biggest
creates
border.
a security and humanitarian nightmare. The topography along the stretch varies significantly.
You cannot
from
cover the
deserts
whole
to
border.
mountains, river valleys, and plains,
There is some
making it
officers
difficult
on
to
the way.
guard and easy to exploit by cartels. Border agents are forced to spread resources thin on assets that assist them in traversing the area, like ATVs, trucks, boats, and even horses. This is done at the cost of using more personnel and surveillance methods. Despite this, some areas of the border are still simply impassable on the American side. This adds another difficult aspect to the situation, because it means there's an international and cross-border activity that the U.S. has little to no control over. Many areas will have large population centers on the Mexican side of the border and little to no infrastructure on the American side, making them ideal places for launching
very
points
good,
into
nah.
the U.S.
Easily.
Despite federal loosening of border crossing restrictions, Texas State Governor Greg Abbott has continuously pushed for increased patrolling and funding towards the issue.
$500 million.
Fontana Island being a primary target in this effort. Though executed by law enforcement, the operation to seize the crossing was conducted like a military operation. Fontana Island is not an isolated objective. Texas Department of Public Safety acknowledges that there's a very strong possibility that it's only part of a prolonged island hopping campaign. Fontana Island wasn't even the first island to be seized by Texas law enforcement. Two small islands approximately 90 miles to the northwest near Eagle Pass, Texas, were seized near the official border crossing in order to help mitigate illegal border crossings. As Texas continues to ramp up its own efforts to curb the border crisis, legal issues between state and federal governments continue to arise. While working towards the same goal, state law enforcement and federal border control have recently begun to clash over permissions and authorities. Eagle
like the
Pass, where
state
the first
and
two islands were
the
seized,
country is not
now
aligned.
the grounds of a political standoff between President Joe Biden and Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
See,
A
this is
recent
what we are talking
seizure
about.
of a public park by National Guard soldiers
India, this
sparked
will not happen.
controversy after they denied access of the area to Border Patrol agents. Ultimately, this comes down to differences in migration prosecution at the state and federal levels. The U.S. Supreme Court is being tied into the situation regarding the razor wire established around the park, which Border Patrol agents were seeking
it
to
is
cut
allowing to
through
cut
in order
razor
to
wire.
process immigrants already across the border.
So this number was shocking, like 2.5 million people are coming into USA illegally or legally. Legally, I think so it is very good because like it is signed and everything is right only. But illegally they are coming, so that is very big thing. And now there is the country wants these people to be safe and the state does not want them. So it is a big fight between them, and now the state is putting wires and everything and they are not allowing it. And that raid also, I think so the raid was there but they could not find anything. It just means that there was someone in the police might have said something that okay, we are going to raid, and everybody just went away.
And I just love the way the US did, like everything was systematic. And after I always feel whether it is about ships or anything, they always give kind of warnings and they properly observe everything, and then they come to the point that now we have to take the action, and they did take the action.
Yeah, and they also made that island their own, kind of, you can say. They made the whole barbed wire things and all, but never know, like if the government orders them to cancel it or what will happen. So do let us know what is happening currently in the comment section below. So do like, share and
subscribe.
Bye.